Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Andrew Wichterman. I'm a professor and Christian licensed professional counselor. I am not a counselor. I'm not a biblical counselor. I'm not what Christians might call a secular counselor. I am a Christian, and I practice counseling, and the Bible is my foundation and framework for the entirety of my life, and my work is not excluded. This video was sent to me by a student and channel watcher who wanted me to react to it because this gentleman, Dr. Greg Gifford, is being interviewed by Amy Beth Stuckey, and he is what he calls himself a biblical counselor. Historically, biblical counselors are more nouthetic in nature. They use the Bible only. They deny any kind of counseling theory or technique that comes out of those theories. I see things differently. They wanted to know what I thought. I teach in a program of 1,700 Christian counseling students. Well, they're not all Christians, but the vast majority are. The school is a Christian school. Before I get into this part 2, because I talked so much last time that the video was like 20 minutes, I only got through about 15 minutes of video or 12 minutes of video. I want to ask rather sheepishly for you to like this video and follow my channel. I feel silly asking. It's like asking for attention, but I'm trying to grow this channel so more people can see it. I don't know of any other channel, tell me if I'm wrong, of any significance on YouTube that is from Christian counseling perspective, not nouthetic, biblical, not secular, but one that rides that line down the middle that Eric Johnson always talked about. I feel a little funny about even asking, but would appreciate it if you could help me grow in it, just because I don't want this to be about me so much, but about the content. I'm a little sick today, so I'm feeling kind of funny, so there's your authentic moment. So let's get started with this. He was talking about the difference between body and soul and mind and brain, and the way he was parsing them out didn't make a lot of sense to me in the last video, just to give you a context of where we are. I got so frustrated, I accidentally kicked a box.
Right, I am.
Okay.
And because that's, first of all, it doesn't matter what I say, but that's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
The Bible's going to say your soul, your spirit, your mind, and your heart are all part of your...
I wish he'd give us a reference, because he's just saying this. It's okay, where are you getting that from? Where in the Bible is this?
material person.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be a Bible scholar. Give me some information. Back it up.
Most used term is heart, especially in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
So your entirety of your immaterial person uses those terms interchangeably. And I am not a person who thinks you can divide them out. I know some people it's dichotomy or trichotomy or something like that. But it seems like the Bible is more talking about your inner man versus your outer man.
Mm-hmm.
So your inner man is the
Okay, so he's gone from, this is exactly what the Bible says, it doesn't matter what I think, to, listen to this.
I know some people it's dichotomy or trichotomy or something like that. But it seems like...
Seems like. He went from, this is what the Bible says, doesn't matter what I think, to, it seems like.
Bible is more talking about your inner man versus your outer man.
Mm-hmm.
So your inner man is the source of those things. And it's just, so it's easy. So like if I died right now, my brain would cease to work, but my mind would still be functioning.
Okay, his physical brain, but there's so many ways you can go with this. I don't know if I see the point to this kind of part of the conversation.
Yeah.
In my soul, in my immaterial soul, as I'm in the presence of the Lord, 2 Corinthians 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we got some passages.
The brain then.
So the problem with a lot of this stuff, and even when I get into it with my students, I say get into it. I try to teach my students certain things. We just kind of throw Bible verses onto things. We slap them. And so he's in the kind of setting where he can't exactly exegete it, to be fair. But he's just slapping it on the end. I said, help me understand. Tell me what's going on. Give me the exegesis. You can do that. You're a Bible scholar. You should be able to rattle that off. You wrote a book on this, for Pete's sake, but I'm not getting any of that here. This has been my problem with John MacArthur, who put his own name on a Bible. That tells me something. A lot of these guys that talk from that perspective, they just throw stuff out about counseling, but there's not really anything to back it up. When they do, it's like these slap-ons. It's, I love Jesus. Here's a verse.
I do my best not to dabble in medical science.
You're going to dabble in psychological science.
It is that organ that is responding to your inner person. It's the control center of your outer man. It's like your physical heart.
This is the other thing, and I talked about this in the first video. What's the brain? The brain's a physical thing. It involves a sense, at least a level of medical science, but you're going to act like you're an expert on that.
But what is it doing? It's not causing my thoughts. It's not determining my thoughts. It is more like a filter biblically of what is happening in my thinking.
There it is again. There's no argument. There's no explanation. Putting himself as an expert on this particular topic. He's got a book that says lies counselors tell you, because we're all a bunch of filthy, dirty liars, apparently. And
So this was a fascinating thing to me. I was talking with a guy after an ACBC conference.
ACBC conference, also known as the Emotional Damage Conference. Got to be careful what I say.
He had to use sign language. I don't speak ASL. There's a translator in between us.
By the way, that's like the American Biblical Counseling Association. Oh, did I mute you? I muted him. Watch out, world.
Articulating what does the brain do? And he said, but what about Alzheimer's, dementia, traumatic brain injuries? Like, what about those, Gifford? And I was like, well, what those are is your brain is damaged and it is affecting or influencing the
Depression and anxiety doesn't have anything to do with brain function, does it?
way that your mind expresses itself, but it's not causing it.
Great.
Causation comes from the mind.
There's such a fundamental misunderstanding of mental illness and how it works here. You say you won't dive into the medical stuff, but you're going to dive into the psychological stuff, which has a ton of brain science involved. And then you're going to act like you're the authority on this and dismiss a whole field of research.
So can you experience a concussion or a TBI or something, and it influences the way that your mind is expressing itself? Or maybe we've met that person in Alzheimer's where they start to become kind of mean, agitated. But what Alzheimer's is doing is removing the filter. What dementia is doing is removing that filter of your brain.
This is just so unhealthy. I don't even know how else to say it. My gut's going boing, 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 boing. I've seen all these people damaged in church. And like people talk like this. They talk like this. Church hurt. Traumatized by how you were treated by people who were supposed to love you.
So where does it come from? Biblically, where does it come from? It comes from your inner person. And the outer person is rested, well, unrested. Your physical body is healthy, prepared, unhealthy. I see the wheels turning. So what you got?
Well, I'm curious about that. And
I don't have as much expertise. It's hard to beat no expertise at all.
like dementia and Alzheimer's, things that happen in our brain can affect the things, I think, can affect the things that we say. I know that hormones can affect our moods and even our perception of things.
But let's deny all that because it makes me uncomfortable.
Particular way that might not be in alignment with the Bible or reality. So when you say the person with Alzheimer's becomes irritable and that was who they were all along, it's hard for me to...
If they didn't act irritable, oh my goodness, it's just a fundamental misunderstanding. Denial of the existence of reality.
Maybe it is true in some cases, but is there not something about Alzheimer's that would make a very typically sweet and kind person, just that it would irritate something in them that would actually make them seem more bitter than they actually are?
Yes, because there are parts of your brain that aren't functioning as well and other things come out. And when you're always anxious and afraid because you're confused all the time, because you think your husband or your wife is still alive and everybody who walks in reminds you of them or you think is them, you're going to be anxious, you're going to be afraid, you're going to be irritable because this is how the brain works.
Let me share a couple of thoughts with you, then answer that directly. Where does our thinking come from? The Bible teaches the mind. Where does our actions come from? Proverbs 4:23, our heart. So we guard it, we keep it, from it flow the well springs of life. What's the epicenter of why I do what I do? It's my immaterial self. And I have to reckon with that.
I don't want to call John MacArthur's group a cult by any means. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I get vibes of it when I hear this kind of stuff, when we're denying parts of people, like denying their emotions as legitimate, denying how the body actually works scientifically, or the brain works scientifically. And we're just telling people, that's not reality. You're just wrong. And then these other things that I've heard about, I've read on some of those news sites about what happened at MacArthur's church and how women were treated. And I'm not drawing any conclusions necessarily, but I get this vibe of we're just like in this single lane and it gives us a certain amount of power over people, and we like that, so we're going to deny everything else and try to explain it away. That's the vibe I get. Now, I don't know this guy, and I don't want to talk bad about him like that. This is not a healthy view of mental health and mental illness.
To your point,
I can't come up with the right words to say right now because I'm flustered, my head's sick and foggy, and I haven't had time to prepare.
can those physiological things be an extreme encouragement? Absolutely.
What is that?
Absolutely. Can Alzheimer's, dementia, hormones, even sleeplessness, poor nutrition, pain, can those things be an encouragement? Yes. But those things are never the determiner.
Are you kidding me? Okay, some of that maybe, but like you're having a physical reaction. This is a physical reaction to what's going on with your body. It comes out emotionally in some cases.
Think of my words. Those are all an overflow of what's coming from my heart and my inner person.
Okay, that's true, but there are also, like, it's the denial of the physical reaction, or the brain is a physical thing. It's just Gnosticism. That's what this is. It feels like Gnosticism. Oh, boy, it feels like Gnosticism.
So I want to make sure that we give a space and say, yeah, totally. A person can be really, 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 really encouraged to be irritable.
By a physiological force.
Just like a person can be really encouraged to have a broken leg.
But not caused. If we're using irritability as anger in the biblical context, a Christian cannot.
He hasn't given us the biblical context. He hasn't given, but maybe he just doesn't have time for this because of the nature of this platform. I want to be fair to him. I don't want to hate on him.
And caused to sin by their body.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I never heard it described like that. Why is this differentiation between the mind and the brain so important for how Christians understand things like depression or PTSD?
Yeah, good. Because in 2025, we can thank Darwin for naturalism becoming the dominant Western worldview, and everything has a medical explanation.
Okay, folks, Darwinism is not my worldview. I'm a Seventh-day creationist. I understand the idea of Christians that say the world was created, then it evolved. I get that. I don't agree with it. I don't know what that has to do with the way I see PTSD and things like anxiety and the stuff he's going to talk about here.
What's happening in my inner person and my soul. So we have medical sounding terminology that is starting to be used of an immaterial entity, which is our mind.
Soul's attached to the body, mind's attached to the brain, is what he said. Why can there be a physical entity that's acceptable as far as the body, but not the brain?
Mental illness.
Right.
Or mental disease. Think of it this way.
The physical body can have disease, but not the brain. This is what I heard. Tell me if I'm wrong.
When you go to a psychiatrist, what type of medicine do they actually do? Just like
medicine for your brain.
Don't trust me, like Google it, go to a psychiatrist. They're going to have you verbally describe what's taking place, and they are not empirically diagnosing you based off of vitamin deficiencies, brain scans. So you can leave a medical doctor's office with a medically sounding label.
Okay, so I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I do testing. It's formal testing. It's the person answering questions about themselves. We're measuring behavior and brain responses in some cases. We also have people get checked out by sleep doctors. We have them go to naturopaths and medical doctors to have their blood levels and different levels of different vitamins and minerals within their bodies and different brain chemicals measured. We do all that. He just looks at it from a distance and says, I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable, so I'm going to stay over here and say it's wrong. I do all the things that he just said medical doctors do. I don't do them myself. I send them to the medical doctors. Sometimes you don't need the levels to understand that significant trauma has happened ahead of time. Like, this is happening. We're going to work on this particular issue, like PTSD, and I'm going to send you to the sleep doctor, and I'm going to send you to the medical doctor, and we're going to see what's going on in your body physically. But no, I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. It's emotional, so I'm going to stay.
About your mind, there was no medicine that was practiced to diagnose you for that.
It's just not true.
That's a really good point. And I've had a lot of people on who are...
It's a really good point because I don't understand it
We're
either.
skeptical about this whole chemical imbalance thing that we hear, like a serotonin
Right.
deficiency, but they're never measuring that. Like they're not doing
The ignorance level is just so high.
blood work to say, oh, yep, you're low on serotonin.
Right.
You talk to someone and they tell you. And what other form of illness do we have where the doctor is, oh, I can just hear it in your voice, you're
Yep.
vitamin D deficient. No doctor does that. They test your blood.
100%.
But for mental illness,
We look at their background, their life experiences, the things that could have caused onset of these symptoms. We look at when the symptoms started and when it just happened before that. And then we send them to the doctors, the medical doctors, and the sleep doctors, and the naturopaths. And we have them check levels, and we have them see where they're deficient, and then we deal with the mental side. It's a multifaceted approach.
So if you were like,
Interesting.
hey, doctor, I think I have thyroid issues,
right.
then they would be like, okay, well, let's look. And then they're going to test. But when you go to a
The other thing they don't talk about here is like the tests are valid, they're reliable, they're consistent, they've been measured over time. They've been measured with large groups of people to ensure accuracy, like the psychological tests. They just dismiss a whole branch of the science.
psychiatrist and you say, hey, I think I'm depressed, they're going to say, do you feel sad? Do you struggle with motivation? And it's, wait a minute.
I might say that, but that's all they say. It only takes 2 minutes. We just went to school for 10 and a half years to do nothing.
A medical doctor, don't you want to do a scan? Don't you want to study my
Yes.
brain? You
Yeah.
want to look at neurotransmitters?
Do that.
The real question is, how did we become okay with that? Because that's more,
We didn't, because that's not what we do. Maybe some people do that. Maybe some people are actual quacks, you could say, and they don't do any of the right type of assessment, or they don't look at what's valid and reliable, or they don't look at the 30, 40, 50, 60 years behind some of these assessments as to their accuracy. It's just so.
like, why don't we laugh at that person doing that? And
Yeah.
that gets back to the naturalistic worldview that we start with, that we think in terms of there must be a body problem. This medically trained doctor is telling me that I have an illness of my mind,
I thought the brain was physical.
a disease of my mind. So I must have that.
That's interesting. It's actually a lot more dangerous to give someone potentially
And by the way, he's talking about psychiatrists giving medication. They'll do a lot of blood tests for certain medications anyway, but licensed professional counselors and those of us that do therapy from other disciplines, we don't do anything with medication. We'll refer it to a medical doctor or a psychiatrist specialist before we do it. Like, we don't even recommend it unless we think it's absolutely necessary in many cases. And then we send them to the medical people to handle it.
psychosis inducing drugs than it is to give someone thyroid medication that they don't need. And yet we accept that as totally scientifically
Right.
a viable option.
Right. Or think of our kids.
I'm a little lost as to what they're even talking about at this point.
Too.
Yeah.
School psychologist says, I think they have this thing. Usually
Yeah.
for guys, it's ADHD, and it's for girls, it's anxiety. And then now all of a sudden we have no medical evidence, no medical testing, no medical proof. And now I'm putting my kids on
Can't say the same thing anymore.
psychotropics. And I haven't just paused to think, wait a minute, like, how did they actually diagnose? And how do they know this is a problem of the body and not the immaterial self? That is the crisis that we're at.
So the inability to concentrate, the actual physical wiring of the brain and all the brain scans that we have over the years of this. Granted, he's overdiagnosed. I just did a test this morning with a kiddo that has some early childhood trauma and has some symptomology of ADHD. I don't think they have ADHD. I don't think they need medication. I've got to look at the test results. The ones that are valid and have been around for 30 or 40 years and reliable and been shown over and over again with different populations. I've got to look through that stuff to make sure my diagnosis or my thoughts are correct after the 1-hour interview that I did. But I didn't just ask if they were depressed or anxious or if they feel sad or if they feel hyperactive or if they have trouble concentrating. We had a whole conversation about the entirety of their life and their family history and their own history. And then we do the assessments that both measure their behavior, right, that this child has in relationship to trauma, It's this whole big scientific process that I went to school for 10.5 years to do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Why are you talking about things that you don't understand?
How could we not have diagnoses growing? How could we not have children being diagnosed as early?
It's because sometimes people don't do it right and they're not properly trained, or they just don't care. I'm talking about therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, school counselors, or teachers that are just begging for some relief because they have 20, 30 kids in their classroom all bouncing off the walls, and the only thing they know to do is get medication in them, which I'm not okay with either. That's the position they find themselves.
As 3, 4 years old with mental illness. Like, how could you not?
I don't know what the actual percentage is, but somewhere around 90 to 95% of diagnoses are unethical to diagnose a 3 or 4-year-old with. Most therapists that I know will not diagnose a kid that young with something unless they've had some significant trauma in their early childhood. Abuse, neglect, watch somebody die, loss of a parent, that they were present for the loss, all of that kind of stuff. Like, we'll work with those kids and help them through and process those emotions. We'll help them process those emotions and work through them. We're not going to medicate that kid. We're not going to diagnose them with something crazy either.
Because you have no objective criteria by which you can diagnose mental illness.
Oh, I just went through this. Yes, we do.
That's so interesting. And another consequence of the psychology world in general, just not believing in the soul and not believing in.
Yeah, we talked about this last video. It's just not true for the vast majority of us. If they're an atheist, maybe an existentialism at its root underpinnings, but the way it's applied in most cases, we don't act like a soul doesn't exist. Do you know that a vast majority of the counselors in this country are actually Christian therapists these days? Because out of the top 5 schools as far as size in the country, 3 of them are Christian schools. My own university has anywhere from 14 to 1,800 students at any given time when people graduate and when the new ones start. Okay, because we have like a constant rotation of people taking electives as they start, and then they actually start the program that fall, which is late July in that case. The vast majority of the field, maybe the loud ones over at the ACA and the APA, but the vast majority of people in the field, I would wager, are actually either Christians or they believe in a soul. So they keep saying this, they keep saying these things they keep saying these things as if it's fact, when they have no evidence, no numbers, no understanding. The very thing they accuse counselors and therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists of doing, they're doing right now.
And at least a higher power and objective morality is that everything goes back to the self. You are both the problem and the solution at the same time, which is completely illogical. And I'm wondering what you think about this.
For those of us who are actually Christian therapists, we love Jesus. We follow him. We submit to him. He has saved our souls. He's both the foundation and the framework of everything we do. We do not think like that. And I am so tired of getting lumped into groups like that.
This quote in East of Eden, the John Steinbeck book, for those out there who don't know that. And he was talking to someone who was very depressed after they had a loved one die. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but basically, you have to go about your life as if it is a play. You don't feel it, but you have to do what you have to do, and eventually it will become real. I just thought how different that is from most of psychology, which tells you that the most important thing is to be authentic, to feel what you really feel, and then to tell people how you really feel, and to constantly focus on your emotion, and that's the only way to heal.
We don't tell people to focus on their emotions all the time. We tell them not to ignore them, because the church, like John MacArthur's church, where they deny all emotion altogether and any kind of mental illness, tells them that it doesn't exist, and they end up pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down, and not only developing mental illness, but physical illness as well. There's a bunch of research on that too, some hard, firm research. It's just perpetuating mental illness all the more. That's what this is doing. There's going to be 2 videos that pop up on either side of me. They're coming, I promise. If they're not up there, they're coming. And again, I would ask you to this video, if you found it helpful, send it to people who you think it might help as well. And subscribe to the channel. We're really trying to build this thing up to get this kind of voice out in the middle. We are truly riding a line between those people who don't think mental illness exists, and those people who don't think God exists. Oh,